welcome back to Book Banter. Today we're chatting with Maggie Giles. Maggie is a Canadian author who writes suspenseful women's fiction and thrillers. Her debut novel, The Things We Lost, was named a 2023 Distinguished Favorite in Women's Fiction by the Independent Press Awards. Maggie dove into writing a novel headfirst despite having aphantasia, let's hope I'm saying that right, a condition where one lacks a visual imagination. She lives in Ontario with her mastiff mix Jolene and spends most of her days enjoying the outdoors, from swimming to hiking to skiing in winter. Let's welcome Maggie to Book Banter. Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. And you did say it right.
Did I? Oh, good. Because I was like, I am so going to trip up on that word.
I know. It's a crazy one.
It is. And that's the first thing I want to ask you is, what is it? And how and when were you diagnosed? And I have lots of questions about it. How does it affect your writing?
Absolutely. So aphantasia is exactly what you said it is. It's when one lacks a visual imagination. So basically, most people, when you tell them to imagine or visualize something, they can see it in their mind's eye. Whereas I'm the opposite. Like, I just don't see anything. I have a blank slate up there, and I don't really have that type of imagination. So for me, I like understand description, but it doesn't form a picture. So I don't attach to sort of what I think a character looks like. And that's why I often welcome sort of visual adaptations or some sort of film medium, because it almost puts a face to the character that, you know, I had a sense of, but I just didn't really know how they looked. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. In terms of my writing, the place where I've always really struggled is my description. I am often putting people into rooms, and I have early readers be like, we don't know what we're looking at. We don't know how they look. We don't know what room they're in. And I was like, oh, you need that? Oh, okay. You don't need the dialogue? Like, oh, okay.
Wouldn't that be lively? Dialogue. Yeah.
So early drafts are light on the description. And usually I rely on my early readers or my editors to really pinpoint where to put that description in. Because I also find sometimes now I overcompensate it. And I have an editor be like, why are you describing this stuff? Like, do we need to remember this? And I'm like, I guess not.
Isn't that interesting? So you end up overcorrecting.
Absolutely.
Because you're not sure where the measuring stick is.
Yes, because it's just, it varies, right? Like, and everybody has that different medium of what works for them. And you have some writers that are so flowery with their description. And so it's not out of character for them to mention and describe everything. But I think with me, and especially because of the thrillers, when I describe something, readers pay attention to it. So
I would agree.
I have, my editors being like, okay, you're describing this outfit that this character wears. Like, does it matter? And I was like, no, I guess it doesn't matter. But like, I thought you'd want to see what she was wearing.
Doesn't everybody? That's awesome. I guess it actually, once you learn the parameters around what the thriller genre needs for description, then you have those benchmarks.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, I rely on my early readers like mad, because they are people that have visual imaginations, and they're the ones who can say like, I want to see this, or I didn't need to see this.
Well, and it's really interesting too, because it's one of those things that you don't know until it's pointed out to you.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, that's the other half of your question, was the diagnosis. So I didn't actually get diagnosed. They don't really have any sort of, I mean, I'm sure there is out there, but it's basically kind of a self-diagnose. Diagnose. Oh my God. What's the word I'm looking for?
Diagnosis.
Thank you.
Yes.
Self-diagnosis. I'm struggling with words today.
Just words are hard.
Yeah, we work in them.
I know.
So it came about because I was having a conversation with two people that I worked with. One of them was a graphic designer and one of them was a website developer. And the web developer was very much like me. He thought in numbers, he thought in code. And so we were talking to this designer, and he's like, well, when you have like a final design, do you see it in your head before you like go and draw it? And he goes, yep, I see everything. Like like exact detail, exactly on. And I was like, I'm sorry, you see things in your head? Yeah, like, and the web developer's like, you don't visualize anything. I'm like, I don't think I do. And he goes, yeah, I'm the same. Like, I have no visual imagination. And I was like, I didn't realize I didn't have that.
You didn't know it was missing. Exactly.
And it was so fascinating because it was just such a light bulb moment. Because I remember, like, growing up, people would be like, oh, that's not how I pictured that character in the book. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
I didn't care to picture them in any way.
I'm like, I didn't
need to.
I never, what do you mean? That's not how you pictured them? Like,
it wasn't part of the story.
Like, there wasn't a drawing. What are you talking about?
Nor was there a test.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. You know what? That really makes so much more sense to me now to understand that challenge from when I read your books, because your books are so strong in the pacing and in and they're not like easy to write. They're complicated twists and turns and a lot of backstory. Like, there's a lot to remember that the reader has to pull through to understand what happens at the end. So you've compensated in a beautiful way. So
thank you.
Good job.
I have amazing editors.
Oh gosh. If it weren't for editors,
seriously,
I still struggle with where commas go. So,
oh my God, I honestly, to this day, I look at like finished product and I'm like, oh, I wrote that, and I was like, oh no, my editor helped me write that.
Right, right. It's amazing, actually. They are like the little wind beneath your wings that stays in the shadows. So.
Yeah, couldn't survive without them. I stand by it.
And it's so interesting. And it's for me to hear about your challenge in writing is so opposite, because I have a great big movie screen on my forehead.
Yes.
And I see the story. Like, I'm still mulling through a story before I put it to words on the, well, I was going to say on paper, but really on the computer. There's this challenge for me of letting go of the image of the movie of it and doing the reality of the writing, because it's just never as good.
Absolutely. I thankfully don't have that challenge.
Right.
But yes, like it is crazy, because it is that sort of thing. There is aphantasia, and then on the opposite spectrum, there's hyperphantasia, which is that movie picture. And there's like, I think it was like 3 to 5% of people have aphantasia, and like 6 to 10% have hyperphantasia. And then in between, it's a total spectrum. So it's like, you could see things in no detail, but you still see stuff. And, vice versa.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it just shows you that good stories come from all different positions and places.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
There's a story for everyone to write, and there's a story for everyone to read. Mm-hmm. And the two may not be the same for one individual, but there's an audience for all of it.
There absolutely is. And I will say that being in the writing industry over these years, I've definitely learned there's an audience for everything.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Sometimes things you're very surprised there's an audience for.
Sometimes we don't talk about those things. It's amazing. Yes, I would agree. And it's kind of, you want the tea that you're pouring to be the one that people have their teacups out for. And it's a relationship between an author and readers. So, there's no point to us existing if we didn't have readers.
1000%. I mean, I like reading my work, don't get me wrong, to a point.
Yeah. I'm like if I have to read it a third time, we're pushing it.
Don't get me started. That's a one good thing about the traditional publishing process, is that by the time I look at it again, it's been several months and I kind of forget.
Isn't that is actually a very good point. The good thing for me, I have a very short-term memory issue. So by the time, if I've left a book sit for even like 3 to 4 weeks and then start and have to edit it or rewrite, it is like reading something brand new to me.
I love that.
So that's the, positive side of short-term memory issues.
We just take what works for us.
Exactly. We lean into all the things.
Exactly.
Flip them on their head so that they're positive.
That's exactly it.
So the first book of yours that I read was Twisted, which is I can't say enough about Twisted. You just have to read it. And I'm not a really fast reader, but I raced through it. So can you just tell everybody who doesn't know what it's about, what the premise of the story is?
Absolutely. So Twisted is based around, it's a bit of a murder mystery, a bit of a crime thriller. It's based around 3 points of view. It is a detective, a madam, and an heiress, and it kind of follows how their stories get intertwined due to this very mysterious prescription medication that is new on the scene. So there's a little bit of murder, a little bit of mystery, a lot of mayhem, and it will twist you up and down.
Oh, yeah. Like that was the late night into the early morning reading, because you can't let go of the thread. It's like you've tugged the thread and now you just have to let the whole thing unravel in order to make it make sense in your head. So you have to read it all.
I have to say, so this is a really, really early draft, and the book has changed, a lot, just on my writing improved. But the best compliment I probably got on it was when I had a reader go through like a very early draft, and he's literally like, I have no idea what is going on, but I cannot stop reading. And yes! I'm like, okay, well, that's great.
Because there are moments of that where you're like, wait, what just happened? And then when the pieces fall together, they fall together very beautifully, because it's like,
Thank you.
I don't know how you plot that. Because I'd be like, I don't know how good I'd be at it being a mystery or thriller author. I'd be like, red herring here, red herring here. It'd be so scripted. It wouldn't feel natural necessarily. And this just felt kind of like real life is unscripted, and it just flows from, sometimes the car doesn't start and then you're late to the appointment and then things just spiral from there. It's kind of like that, but 10 times worse.
Well, thank you. And I promise you it's development, because there's lots of stuff that I hint at early on. And then, I have readers that go, yeah, this gave that away, or, you really like beat the drum on this one. You don't need to tell us 5 more times. We get it.
Right.
So
but you're like, it's important to me.
It's important. Like, but you have to know. They're like, we got it the first time, and now we know we have to know.
Right.
So readers, like I stand by it. My beta readers are huge. They're really the ones that find all my problems.
I love it. Beta readers are instrumental. They really are. And it doesn't matter when they get the draft.
Agreed.
I've done it kind of both ways, where they've gotten a very early draft and then it's just a landslide of stuff coming back. But I've also done it where it's already going to advanced readers and I just got behind the ball, and so now you're getting it. Mm-hmm. And I still get quality, amazing feedback of, well, you didn't tell us what this is.
Absolutely. Because you don't think that way, right? Like, you work on something for so long and you're so set and you're just like, I've nailed it. Then you get a fresh set of eyes, and they're like, even on the draft I'm working on right now, it's so wild. We've had like 6 people go through it, and still the latest editor went through and she's like, his eyes are hazel here. 3 pages ago, they were brown. And I'm like, why has nobody caught this?
Those are the things that I'm good at catching. I catch those kind of things, because I'm like, that must have been important, Tuck.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. But there is always things like that. Well, I had actually, for the one that's coming out in October for me, Cocktails Before Midnight, nobody found any typos at all. And I'm like, can't be. That's just not possible.
It's impossible.
It is impossible. So I'm like, okay, let's, well, looks like it's ready to go. So I'll load it up to the retailers, and I kid you not, Amazon did its job. Came back with, it appears you have a spelling error.
Oh.
Now, only one, and I will probably never spell suppress wrong again. But did you know there's 2 P's in suppress? Amazon knew.
Amazon knew. I mean, it's good for something, I guess.
But the I skips over so many things like that, right? Like,
oh yeah, we fill in the blanks, right?
We do. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. And I find too with like double L's or double P's or stuff like that, that's where there usually is something. But if you don't know, you don't know.
Mm-hmm,
so it's fixed now. It's ready to go. But I did have to upload it everywhere. So,
just like for one word.
I know. I did contemplate, but I was like, no. No, my typo brain will not let me.
No, you can't. Once you know, like, you know, there's times I listen, and I do listen to my audiobooks, and I'm always interested to hear my readers. But there's times I listen to my audiobook and then I hear the error and I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's out there. There's nothing I can do about it. And no one's probably going to notice, but I'm like,
so true. And actually, you know, that's actually one of the benefits of audiobooks is that I'll listen and I have to proof the audiobook. So I proof the audiobook with the book in front of me and I go, okay, who did it wrong? It's not usually them. Just saying. So
it's usually what's right in front of them.
Exactly. So it's fascinating that way, but it is fun to watch somebody else bring your story to life. That's that's a perk.
Yeah, it's been very exciting to listen to my audios. I know some writers won't do it, but I really do love doing them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I listen to everyone. Everyone. In fact, I just got a couple new audiobooks on my app today.
Amazing.
Way to go. Time saver.
It is.
So Twisted actually has a sequel.
It does.
Wicked is, and great titles, by the way, like spot on, one word, you know, when you don't have to use 12 words, you can use one. That would be a really good skill set to have. And Wicked is just another fast-paced read. So my question is, when you started Twisted, did you already know that there would be a sequel?
So when I started Twisted, no, I did not know there was going to be a sequel. But when I pitched Twisted, I had already started a sequel. So I originally had a very different ending for Twisted. I had some early readers have issues with some of my ending parts that I didn't really want to address or change. So I started kind of looking more and more into this prescription medication. When I first started writing Twisted, the medication actually wasn't involved. I had a recommendation. Like when I first started Twisted, I had no idea what this book was going to be. It was so out there. I had so many more points of view. I mean, it's still very out there, but it sort of was so unrefined and I didn't really know the direction that I was going. I just knew that there was a story here with these girls. And I had a reader recommend sort of tying in this medication or this sort of assist behind some of the things that happen in Twisted. And so I started exploring that a bit more. And as I explored the medication side of things, I realized that there was a bigger story behind Twisted and this medication. So that's really where Wicked came from, was because Twisted sort of introduced what this is, why it's here, where, and Wicked really went deeper into like where this came from and why this got out. And sort of the story behind that. And I always knew I wanted to write Blaine, just because I love him so much.
Yeah, he's easy to love.
So I knew I wanted to write him, and I knew he had more of a story. So in the original version of Twisted, he actually does go in and speak to the police. And so I opted to make some changes based on his decisions because of what happens in Wicked and where he goes. So that was sort of where it came from. But when I pitched Twisted, I had 20,000 words of Wicked done. Yeah. I had a pretty solid idea of where I wanted to take it. But I hadn't written it in years. Like I'd written those 20,000 words like 5 years ago or something like that. So I had to go back through all of it, learn it all again.
Where did I put it?
I know. I was like, what is this book that I wrote? Like, is this even worth it? But, you know, I will say, like, from Wicked, all of my original chapters that I wrote are in there still. Like, I've made some changes, but all the original 20,000 words are there. I've adjusted some of the, you know, Blaine's an opening chapter, whereas he wasn't an opening chapter before. Like, some things have changed like that. But, yeah, so it was definitely something that developed when I really realized that this medication had its story, a story of its own. Totally.
The medication is its own storyline for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it is the reason for everything else falling apart. Mm-hmm. And coming together. It's like, yeah, like I couldn't imagine Twisted without Wicked, because Wicked answered so many questions that I still had. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know, even though Twisted was finished and complete, I still felt like you say, there was more to that story. So I'm so glad you wrote it.
Thank you. And I mean, it's been really cool kind of having that sequel out there now. It's just sort of starting to get reviewed on NetGalley. It's getting decent reviews. I mean, my mother, she's biased, but she did say that she liked Wicked better than Twisted. She thought it was a better book.
All of our books get better the more we write.
They do. But you know, readers are saying mixed things. I've had some readers say they like Twisted better. I've had some readers say they liked Wicked better. So it's just, you know, none of the point of views overlap. Like the characters overlap a couple, but just it's all new points of view. So it's kind of exploring new characters. So I guess if you like the characters in Wicked better than the characters in Twisted, you never know.
Well, they might be easier to understand or relate to. But at the same time, I felt like we got a better insight into those characters from Twisted. And so that's where I think I really liked Wicked too. I'm sorry, I'm on the Wicked fence, but
that's okay. I love it.
You could read Wicked on its own, but it's so much better if you've read Twisted first.
Yeah, so I definitely have some people who have reviewed Wicked without reading Twisted. Some of them have said they like standalone, like you can read it on its own, no problem. Some have said they found it too confusing. It totally varies. I think, you know. Yes. And then I also think I just really love Boone and Blaine, and you get to deal with them for 2 books. So just read both because you'll like them both.
Exactly. I would agree. I think it's, really, it's just another book. It's all good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to skip all my questions here and ask you, is there a plan for a 3rd book in that series?
So I've been asked, because I do sort of end Wicked in a way that I could go on. There is potential. We're kind of going to see how these do. And, you know, and really just gauge interest. Like if there is people looking and they want more of, you know, Boone and Blaine, then there's a very big possibility. The reality is that if there is a 3rd book, it will feature both of them. I think it will probably be both of their points of view as well. But I've also, you know, theorized that there is a potential to tie in some prequel or some, you know, like how this drug kind of, or how the family got involved in this drug and that sort of thing. So there's definitely some potential. I kind of noodled with like, maybe I'd be doing 3 points of view and one of them would be a past point of view and you wouldn't really know until later in the book or something like that.
Actually hard. So fascinating.
So play around with some stuff. But I mean, I will say when I finished Wicked, I definitely started making notes for a potential 3rd book. Okay. And my publisher was like, what are you doing?
That's not what we said.
And I'm like, well, she's like, write the next book. I'm like, okay.
Right. Well, I couldn't imagine what your title could be, but it's got to be a 1-word title. So
yes, I've noodled a couple.
You're good at that.
But I'm not sure yet because it kind of has to stay on theme, right? So I'm like Twisted. The story was Twisted. Wicked. The drug is Wicked.
Yep.
So it's kind of, what is it?
Yeah, the titles honestly are either immediate, right there in front of you, ready to go before you put a single word on the page, or they dog you and are like, hey, remember me? You're supposed to name me the whole way through. So,
oh yes.
And you don't get to pick which one it is. It just kind of happens that way.
And you know, of my 4 books, I've kept 2 titles that I picked, which were Twisted and Wicked, and my other 2 titles were picked by my publisher. Well, we worked together, but we changed what my titles were.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I was calling the book that's released in October book 3 for. I'm like, okay, we cannot go out into the world with book 3. It needs a name, you know?
Yeah.
And the funniest part is how I ended up with the title was I went through the entire Canadian Oxford Dictionary looking, okay, what kind of, because all of my names or titles were sounding like a mystery title. I'm like, no, I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression. And so I was like, okay, so I pulled the 2 books in the series off the shelf. And I looked at the spine because my cover designer is lovely. And I'm like, oh, it's so cute. She's got a key and then she's got the clock. And this one could have a cocktail. It's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I not search this first? And I'm like, I haven't. Yeah. So it depends on, it's like the story. It takes its own path to get there. And sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, gee, where was my brain?
Yeah. And then working with the publisher, like I will pitch a title and sometimes she's like, yeah, I don't like that title. And I'm like, okay, so what do you think? She goes, I don't know. What do you think? I'm like, but I liked that one.
You the one I thought.
So then I'm like, okay, here are 20 other options that I'm not sure I'm tied to.
That's it. Yeah, it totally makes a difference. I get it. So I'm probably gonna end up repeating my question because now I don't know where it is on my sheet, but we'll wing it. So suspenseful women's fiction is a very intriguing genre, and there is very real action that tugs the reader through the story, but there's also the element of a character or 2 coming into their own. Yeah, see, it is the same question. You did that really, really well. And my question was going to be, was there another book in the series, which you've already answered? So ignore that, people. I'm sorry about that because I can't read ahead and have a conversation at the same time.
That's okay.
That's beyond my capabilities. So one of the things I did enjoy about the Twisted novels is how the location could be anywhere in North America. I thought that was really fantastic. And the reason that came to mind was somebody had asked me where it was set. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I am so putting my own spin on it, and I think it's set in Canada. But I went through the book, and I was like, I have no idea. It actually doesn't say where it's set. So where is it set, or is it not clear for a reason?
So I think I do say it maybe once, but it is set in Toronto. So I do basically base Ryan and his team as the Toronto police. And then Wicked is actually supposed to be set in Ottawa. So Ryan actually goes to Ottawa to help. So that's sort of like Southern Ontario. Both Twisted and my original novel, The Things We Lost, were set in Toronto.
Okay.
Because I really wanted to have a Canadian novel. Like I felt like I was told, especially with The Things We Lost, where they're like, make it LA or make it New York. And I'm like, I don't know LA and New York. I know Toronto. I lived in Toronto. I was there in 2011 where they go back in time. Like, this is like, I can make this authentic. You tell me to make it in a city that I've never lived in. It's going to not feel as authentic.
That's true, right?
So the Canadian publisher was really nice that I got to keep my Canadian location.
That makes a big difference.
It does.
Yeah, I agree. Because I actually have to go to the places if it's somewhere different. So, and sometimes that just means me and Google Maps are walking around cities, but it's like that's a rabbit hole all its own. And you're looking, wondering, like,
absolutely.
Even when you've been there, you're like, wait, do they take a left or a right here?
Yeah. In like a very early version of The Things We Lost, before I signed with Rising Action, I had been in talks with an agent and it didn't end up panning out. And she had wanted me to change the story to New York. So I had started changing the location of The Things We Lost to New York, but it was really hard because it was a lot of research, because I knew all of this stuff about Toronto, especially in 2011, because I was trying to keep things authentic to the time that she travels back to. Totally. So like if things were closed, I wanted to like reference them as closed or whatnot. And so I had to spend a lot of time. And then on top of that, I have her drive off to visit a penitentiary. And I'm like, okay, so now I'm like, like Googling upstate New York jails.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm just like, this is so much harder than Ontario.
Where you know where they are. Yeah. Yep, exactly. I completely understand that. Yeah. And it's even, it's different when it's a different time period as well, because things change.
Absolutely.
And being authentic. I mean, I don't think there's any type of writing that doesn't require research, but the amount of research you do, should be considered in what genre you're in.
And even with The Things We Lost. So when I had signed it, I had signed it in 2020 and we did the edits in 2021. So that was basically present. And I had her go back in time 10 years. So all of a sudden, 10 years was 2011. Whereas when I first wrote the book, 10 years was more like 2008.
Right.
So they're like, well, because of when the book's coming out, this, and this, like people are going to assume this is 2011. And so I had like a club that they were going to that closed in 2010. So I'm literally like, okay, great. So this entire club scene is now no longer relevant and I need to go find a new club and describe it. Thankfully, it was my time that I was often in Toronto because I was, in my early 20s. I think. Yeah. 2011. Yes. I was in my early 20s. And
those are numbers we don't need to remember.
Yeah. So I just was like, I was down there. So it was just a matter of going and changing up the club from what it was.
Yes. Uh-oh.
And it was hard to kind of, let go of those descriptions, but I wanted to be authentic to the time and it had closed the year before. So
as a historical writer, I would have totally included it and then made an author note about it.
Fair. That's fair.
Because there's far too many of those instances in my world.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you guys have to because you guys are, you have to fill in some of the blanks for you, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just, there's so much there that like all this I can find on the internet for the most part. Like you have a lot of blanks to fill in.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's amazing when you start researching, what kind of toasters there were in 1927.
Oh man.
You go, really? But it was so different. And the thing about those major innovations were they weren't all available to all classes. So societally wise, the upper crust might have had toasters, but the people who were just getting by didn't necessarily. So you have to make decisions on that too. And it's a lot. Yeah, so I can imagine. I totally would have gone, it existed the year before, it's good enough.
It's fine.
So, excuse me. Now, I know that there are some big things happening in your world in 2025. So, can you tell us what readers can expect you in the months to come?
Yeah, so very exciting. My publisher recently signed a distribution deal with Simon & Schuster. So they are getting a really great opportunity with their current list and now their backlist to get some more distribution and some more recognition. So Twisted, which came out last September, it is actually being republished by Simon & Schuster in like a bigger distribution, a reprint essentially, as of March 11th. And Wicked was supposed to come out in October, but due to this reprint is being delayed until April 22nd. So it comes out a month and a half after the reprint of Twisted. So anyone who has not read Twisted don't worry. If you hate my ending, Wicked is coming up soon.
It's just around the corner.
I've had mixed reviews. Some people don't appreciate it, but I promise I fulfill everything.
You do.
And then exciting, I have a standalone thriller novel coming out on June 10th, and it is called The Art of Murder.
I love that title, and the cover is stunning, and I'm like, yep, sign me up, because it totally grabbed me.
Thank you.
I look forward to that. That's a lot of publishing in 1 year, and we know that you've written them over the years, but it is a lot to release in 1 year, but it's super exciting. A bigger print run just means that you're getting so much more exposure in bookstores across the country, across North America, and things like that. And that makes a big deal for authors.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a really great opportunity, and it'll be really neat because, Rising Action, they're a small and mighty publisher, but just doesn't compare to a sales team like Simon & Schuster.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You've got that backing and that support. It's huge. And are the covers going to stay the same?
So they are. So I'm lucky. Yay. All my covers do remain. I will say it's a joke. I always joke around with my publisher that whenever I'm like mad about Twisted or like something it did, I'm like, why did you sign this garbage novel? She's literally like, just so I could make those covers. I'm like,
right? They're beautiful covers. Totally. So, but now I may be mistaken here. But can readers still get the ebooks?
So yeah, so Twisted's ebook and audio are available, and as long as stores or retailers still have print supply, it's just out of print for now until March 11th.
So then there'll be like a second edition.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be like, say, second edition, but maybe it will.
That would be kind of interesting to know if it's.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what it says. I mean, I've got some the original edition here, so I can compare it when I get them.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything for the second print run then.
No, so we did, what did we talk? We talked about just making sure the first chapter of Wicked is in the back, but I'm pretty sure it already is. And that's sort of it. Like with it, I think that unless I wanted to I may add a little preface or something. We'll
see. Okay.
Make something more. I mean, they haven't asked me for it yet. Right now I'm still editing my other book. So
right. Yeah.
Maybe when they're like, we're ready, what do you want? It's like, okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if there's an opportunity to, but the book as it is good to go. So
yeah, thank you.
that is so nice. I think it's going to be really exciting as they hit the shelves.
I think it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing, what next year looks like. I really have no idea. And I was a little overwhelmed with the 3 books in 4 months, but we're just going with it.
Yeah, exactly. The time will go by and things will get done and it'll just be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be so good. So good. So speaking of The Art of Murder, and that you said that was June?
That is June, yeah.
June. Okay, so tell us about that book.
So it's funny because that's the book that I was that we were talking about that was untitled.
Oh,
so
really?
It's funny because you say book 3. I just used to call this one my murder book, and I was like, I guess I gotta stop calling it that,
right?
Because that's really what it is. So the basis of The Art of Murder is it follows 2 best friends, one of them who slowly, not so slowly, descends into becoming a serial killer.
Not the kind of best friend you want.
It was lots of fun to write. I originally based it in my hometown, which then my mother said I had to change because too many people died, and that's not nice for my hometown. So I have now set it in a fictional town that is similar to my hometown and does have certain references, but otherwise, I promise you, this is not what my hometown is like.
It's less murdery.
Yes, but yes, it does. It follows 2 women who have been best friends since they were 13, and they're now in their late 20s. And an unfortunate accident one night out, has my character Alexa experiencing an accidental death, and it really awakens this thing inside of her that she kind of struggles to understand, and sort of follows it down a dark path. And all the while, her best friend is none the wiser, but obviously tragedy is happening all around them.
No kidding. Doesn't that sound so good? Like,
Thank you.
I can't wait. And I should say, I do read a lot of like domestic suspense, legal thrillers, and that kind of, I love the fast pace, and I especially read them when I'm editing, so that I hope that somehow it transfers.
Transfers it. Take the speed.
Right? I don't know if it does, because when I read my books, it always feels slow. So, but that could be, I'm picking out the little nitpickies. So.
I would say that's you, because I do not find your books slow.
You don't? Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
No, I've enjoyed them all.
Oh, good. That's good. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that, because, you never know. It goes out into the world, and then what?
I mean, I just like, people will come up and talk to me about my books now, and I'm like, I don't even want to know if you liked it or you hated it. Just like, if you bought it, I'm good.
Well, because it's out of your control, right? Like, it's very true that it's the reader brings their life experience to the book they're going to read. Mm-hmm. And every life experience is valid and has a place in the world. And when we sit down to read a book, though, we are reading through that lens. And so you could read the same book 10 years later and take away completely different things. So I suggest if you didn't like a book, let it have some time to breathe, like wine. Give it some time to breathe.
And mood reading. Mood reading is a thing. I was literally talking to someone today about, the publishing process and agents and publishers. And I remember way back when I was like still querying, I like read this list that an agent put out. I can't even remember who it was, of like reasons I reject your manuscript. And it's literally like, traffic was awful going into the office, and I'm miserable, and I happened to open your book and I didn't want to read it. I spilt coffee on my desk and it got on your manuscript, so I threw it in the garbage. Like, just like the way they did it. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So it literally is dependent on your mood, but it is like mood reading too. Yeah. Like, there's times I don't want to read, a romance or a historical, and I want a thriller, or I'm like, I have read 10 too many thrillers and I need something light. Like,
yes. Give me a rom-com, right? Yes. Like, totally. And I think that's very, very accurate. Like, the holiday season's coming up. So it's like, I want to have something kind of historic and Christmassy and things like that. And so, so I ordered Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb's latest Christmas with the Queen. So I could.
Well, Heather Webb is an absolute queen on her own. So.
Isn't she? Oh, I love her. She is so sweet. She's adorable. She is. She's just a lovely person, as is Hazel as well. Both of them are they're gems. So,
Too many good writers in the world. It's like, be worse people, so I don't want to read all your books.
It would help with the budget for book spending for sure. So but true. I knew it was going to be one of those ones that I wanted to share. So that's why I ordered the paperback. So
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I do feel like, because I do a lot of stuff on audio, just so I can, because a lot of it's just content consumption, right? Like, I'm out walking the dog for an hour, I may as well listen to a book.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm the same way. Yeah. Or mundane tasks and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Cleaning. I love listening to audiobooks when I clean.
Yes. However, I've learned not to paint.
I could see that. Yeah. I could see that being a little distracting.
Yeah. We have shiplap on our walls, and I was in charge of painting each individual board. And it was such a good audiobook that I lost count of how many times I'd painted.
Oh no.
So some of them are really, really well painted.
Some of them look really good.
I have no idea which ones they are, but they won't need another coat for 20 years.
You'll know in like 10 years which ones they are.
Exactly. So crazy, but that's how good an audiobook can be. Takes you away and you forget what you're doing.
It's so true. I've gotten lost on walks and been like, wait, I gotta go home. Like, I have been like, Jolene, I'm sorry.
She's like, could we leave now?
Like, can we go home? Like, it's been a while.
That's hilarious. So, The Things We Lost was your debut novel.
It was.
And I haven't read it yet, but it is literally sitting on my nightstand. So
that's okay. Like I said, you don't have to read it. You bought it. We're good.
Well, no, it's that much closer to getting consumed. But how is because I know it's different than your more recent work. So how is it different? Is it a completely different genre, or is it?
So it's different because it leans more, of course, it leans more into the women's fiction side of things. So it's more of a suspenseful women's fiction than sort of a thriller. So Twisted and Wicked kind of lean more thriller. Same with The Art of Murder. Art of Murder has a little bit of that women's fiction character growth sort of in it, but it's still very thriller based. Whereas The Things We Lost, the goal of it when I originally wrote it really was about her journey. Because she is very lost and, questioning her life and, basically ends up going back in time to experience what life could have been and doesn't necessarily mean the grass is always greener.
It never does. Hard truth. Absolutely. Okay.
But yeah, so that's kind of the basis of it. It's it's about this mother. She's having an affair. She's unhappy in her life. And she's really ruled by this guilt because she had a friend that passed away when she was in university. And it was always very mysterious, but they all kind of covered it up. So now when she kind of has this night where she sort of wishes that she'd never met her husband, she ends up waking up 10 years in the past, and she's dating an old boyfriend when she should have been dating her husband for 2 years. And this friend who had died is alive 4 years after she should have died. Something changed that, made this woman survive. And so now my character is grappling with, well, I want to go back. I have kids. And as much as I was not happy with my husband, like I had my daughters. Yeah. But they're gone. And so she's grappling with like, I want my daughters back, but like essentially that's wishing for this girl to be dead. So
that's a tough choice. Yeah. Oh, that has the Jen Craven vibes.
That's true. Her and I are pretty good critique partners because we have some similar vibes.
Totally. Like that's one of the things that I love about that kind of writing is that I'm now all of a sudden I'm having to expand my beliefs and my thoughts on things and go, wait, would I do this or would I do that? That's a tough question. It's poking the bear a little of what would you do? Right.
And that was a big thing when I first started writing that because I don't have children, as you know. So I'm writing a mother from an experience of like the most mothering I've done is my dog. And don't get me wrong, she's very well mothered.
That's a lot of mother.
But it's very different from having 2 kids. Like I've never gone through that. So for me to have her go back in time and lose her kids, I did have early drafts where people are like, she should be like going crazy. And I'm like, okay.
Depends on how old her kids were.
Okay. Yeah, fair. So I'm like, okay. So I kind of tied in some more of that anxiety. And then that was it, is that people are like, why would she not be spending her time trying to figure out about going back? So that was really where I was like, well, I need that conflict. Like I need that person that she feels guilt about. And now she's presented with seeing this person again.
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
Yes, that's really brilliant. Now I'm looking forward. Not that I wasn't looking forward to it before. I was. It's just under 2 books at the moment, but it's on the nightstand.
That's all good. No rush.
When it moves to the nightstand, it's closer.
I know that feeling.
Right? Because the stack is out of control. That's what I do like about an e-reader.
Yes, I know. Well, but this is the problem. But it keeps getting bigger.
No, but it doesn't impact you. Nobody else is looking at you from the other side of the bed going, how many books did you buy? Because you can't see them.
Well, I know. So that's why it's actually hilarious, because I have this bookshelf behind me, which is right now full of my own books because I had a bunch shipped to me. But I have like another shelf underneath it that's got not my own books, because everything on our main shelf is full and I don't want him to know what more I get. So it comes in my office.
We have our coping mechanisms. You will never find too many shoes or purses in my house, but possibly too many books.
Although, to be fair, shoes are a bit of an issue in the house because I did work for Blundstone for a while. So thank you.
So, okay, so I know you have another job, but not everybody else knows that. So what does your day-to-day writing life look like?
So I write whenever I can. Sometimes early morning, sometimes evenings. I have a standing weekly call with the writers group, so that keeps me productive. I do have a full-time job, but I work full-time from home, which is really nice. So that time that would be spent commuting can be spent writing, and just sort of that thing. So it's just sort of finding that balance. But mostly my day-to-day is get up, walk the dog, do my job, maybe write some words, cook some dinner, and go to bed.
Sounds like mine. We don't have a dog anymore, but that kind of sounds like mine. Except for I shouldn't say I write all day. There are days where I write all day, but
Absolutely.
It's all the rest of the business of being an author that I end up doing. But it's, and some days I get to spend chatting with people like you.
And it's like, and that's it too, is like, there's some days which are crazy because one thing I really did this summer was back off my social media presence, because I was really overdoing it. I felt like for the last year and a half, not overdoing it, but just really spending a lot of time doing it. And I kind of just went, I don't have the book coming out in the fall anymore. I'm just going to take a breather. So that summer was nice, but I will say it's been really hard to get back into consistently posting.
It is tough. It is tough. I will admit that I love engaging with readers and authors on social media, but our whole lives are wrapped around creating. And so when you have to also create, or you choose to create for social media, it is stealing a little bit from those reserves of creativity.
Absolutely.
So I do feel that. Yeah. I have a tip for you though, and I'll tell you that afterwards.
I like that.
So this is always a question I find hard to answer. So that's probably why I ask it. How have you grown as a person through writing novels?
Oh,
I know, right?
Interesting. I mean, like I've grown absolutely as a writer. I think that it's sort of a bit of a maturity thing. Like, because I started writing in my early 20s, my writing's just really like, I used to write about, 22-year-olds that just want to party. And then they're unfortunately got in a thriller situation, which I do have a book like that. We'll get there. But, I think it was just, it really just matured me a little bit on, understanding what kind of content to write. But then again, I don't even know if that's like, maybe writing's done that, but maybe that's just been a lot of the reading, because I will say before I even got into steady writing, like I realized that I let reading fall off, and throughout university, I just didn't read a ton other than school.
Exactly.
So
that's
when I kind of sat down to write a novel, and then I was like editing it, and everyone's like, oh, you can't write a novel if you don't read, or, Stephen King's favorite, you don't have time to write if you don't have time to read.
Yes.
And I didn't really believe that, because I'm like, I can write a novel without reading lots and lots of fiction, which you can, but it's just when you are in the industry and you're reading all of this and you're listening to all this, you're just understanding what's coming out and what readers are expecting from a certain genre. And so you really learn and grow as a writer yourself, because you start to recognize, more of the industry or a maturity in the industry that as a young writer, I just didn't have. So I would like to think that it's made me a little bit more mature. My boyfriend might disagree, but
you won't ask him. It's so funny, but I think you're right that when you're immersed in the world of it and you become more aware of what is sort of expectations genre-wise, but you also become aware of what other genres or what other authors are doing that you can go, oh, I could add a little of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does widen your experience by reading and everything like that. But I also think that there are seasons of reading, and sometimes you will just spend tremendous amount of time reading everything you can, and then you kind of go, oh, I need to stop for a while.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a balance, and it's not necessarily day to day or month to month. Sometimes it's, decade to decade,
Absolutely.
So.
And I mean, it's content consumption, right? Like it's so fascinating because like I love reading. I love sitting down with a book. I love my audiobooks, but there's some times where it's like, I get so into an audiobook that I crush an audiobook in a day. Yeah. And then, the next day I'm starting a new one and I crush that one in 2 days. And by the end of the week, I've done 3 audiobooks and I'm like, oh, I need a break.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And I was like, I didn't even tell you what all these books were about. I just have so much content in my head.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Because we tend to listen to audiobooks on road trips.
Oh,
and
perfect.
so you go for, 10 days or 12 days on a road trip. That's a lot of audiobooks. Mm-hmm. And by the time you come away, like I have to actually write notes in my phone to keep up with what we're consuming.
Remember them. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I know I will remember them later, but I will be like, who's the author and what's the title? And I'll need those triggers. So
yeah, I'm like, remind me, and then I'll remember.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Status quo for just about anything around here.
I figure that we have so many characters in our heads that it's okay if we maybe forget a couple here and there.
Yes, that's good to hear, because I have a tendency to forget who my characters in past books, what their names were, who they were. Or occasionally somebody will go, "Oh, I love so and so," and I'm thinking, who is that? Is that a real person, or is that a fictional person, or is that? I have no idea. I need more context.
Well, and it's so funny because that's the same sort of thing with that concept of names. So in The Art of Murder, I had a side character named Noah, and it's a girl, and it's just like someone. But Noah Baker is a main point of view in Wicked.
Yeah, that's what I was
and so I'm like going through it, and I like had an editor be like, "Oh, Noah, like for a girl's name, like, are we sure about that?" And then I'm like, you know what? I just need to change it. Because the book that's coming out right before has a Noah in it.
Yeah.
And a main Noah.
Yeah.
I think I need to just change this. So she's Nia. She's Nia.
Oh, that's a pretty name. Yeah.
I like it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you've got characters with the same first initial, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, people are going to trip on this. And so you have to change. And usually you're so far into writing that you're reluctant to change a character's name.
Yes.
Sad.
Well,
and that loss.
There's that. And then there's also, so when I started when I started The Art of Murder, I wrote it so long ago as I wrote a very early draft as a teenager. It was really bad.
Wow.
And it's changed massively, but I kept a lot of the characters' names. Now, originally, I had 3 family member names in this book, and 2 of them die, and 1 of them has a very unfortunate situation happen to them. And so I'm reading through it, and I'm like, ooh, I need to change all of these names.
Oh, no. They're all related to you.
No, they're all related to me. And it's they're not super unique names, but there's people in my life that have this first name. And so, I make the changes, but even then, I still think in my head in terms of their original name. So
absolutely.
It was really funny because while going through The Art of Murder, I guess I did find replace, and I missed one that because it was an apostrophe S.
Yes.
And so I have multiple editors flagging, being like, who is this person? And I'm like, oh, that's his old name.
Exactly. I've totally done that, and I completely agree. Oh my gosh. I still refer to certain characters by their original names, which is why it always catches me off guard when somebody asks about somebody that I've renamed, and I don't know who they're talking about.
Well, and it's interesting with historical too, because I found, I wrote that Anne Boleyn story years and years and years ago, but it's like the amount of Marys and Margarets.
They were not very creative.
And it's just like, or Thomas, like the amount of people that have the same name, Thomas and Henry. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. All I have to do is look at my family ancestry and go, really? How did you know who was who?
I know, but I did. I had readers be like, you've got like Mary and Margaret. And I'm like, yeah, but they're both real people. Like I can't change their name. Yeah, one is her sister and one is her best friend.
And that's the way it is, right? It's so funny. It's so true though. Yeah. Historically, it was just the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it was probably not a lack of creativity and more of a passing down of generations. Because when you think about all the things that got passed down, like houses, and farms and businesses and trade and all of that.
Absolutely. A lot of ancestry names. And too, it's just like, people just they didn't think about it like that because these names had like religious significance or, some historical significance or royal significance. So there's just, for them, that's how they named, because if you went too kind of off book, you were sort of looked at funny.
Well, exactly. And also there wasn't as much travel.
Yeah.
So you weren't exposed to a ton of different names coming in to, different cultures and things like that. So it was, we were much more limited to the Johns and the Henrys of the world. Yeah. So interesting, isn't it?
Yes. Oh my God. It's so true. I love history. It's great.
It is. That's what hooks me every single time. Yep. Rabbit hole after rabbit hole.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The time when I will even say because it was Tudor history that I was writing, that when I used to do my research, I'd all of a sudden end up in the 17th, 18th century because I followed their ancestry and now I'm in France and Spain. like this isn't even what I'm writing about.
But yet knowing all that
but I'm like, I can't stop.
Many a rabbit hole.
I love it.
Yes. And there's things that, that are in my brain now. I can't remember a character's name, but there are things stuck in my brain that I'm like, would somebody play Trivial Pursuit with me?
I know.
I'm like, true.
I've had stuff that I give answers and Mike's like, how did you know that? And I was like, oh, well, I just read this book and it went down this rabbit hole of this thing. So I went and looked it up and then it was a Greek mythology one. And I just read Circe and I had gone down a rabbit hole at one point and I'm just like, oh my God, I know the answer to this. And Mike is like, that was the most obscure question. And I was like, well, I just read the book.
Exactly. Look at what we can learn.
Yeah.
So right? True. That's what I love about reading, is the depth with which we can learn.
Yeah. And I mean, I just think it's always so interesting. I had a friend recently refer to it because we've been doing some historical fiction for our book club. And so we just did The Women with Kristen Hanna.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's sneaky learning.
It is sneaky learning. She's
and
right.
I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect. You're so right. And she's like, because I'm getting invested in the character without me having to sit down and slog through a textbook. And I'm like, historical fiction takes its liberties. But it definitely is.
That's the fiction part.
Yes, exactly. But it definitely is it's interesting to check out because it's just it does immerse you in such a different experience.
Because that's what you're looking for, is the vibe. Mm-hmm. The vibe of an era and with a little bit of authenticity. And some of them are really, really great with their authenticity. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's all over the place. But if you have too much authenticity, it's no longer fiction.
Yes.
So
it's got to entertain too.
It does have to entertain. Absolutely. And author notes are the best friend of a historical fiction author.
Yes. And that's one thing too, is that I've now really liked, especially since getting published, is reading those author notes and those acknowledgments. And I think before I just didn't really think about it.
So true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although I always loved learning how something came to be. Mm-hmm. I love that process. So, I was meant to be an historical.
I love that.
So I know you're working on something now. Can you tell us about your project or not yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of got 2 books in the works. I'm not really sure which one I'm going to pursue. One of them is about 2 best friends that go backpacking in Europe, and one of them gets abducted.
Ooh.
And I actually based the trip off my own trip that I did with my best girlfriend, and we did not get abducted.
I was just going to say, she came home with you, right?
Yes, she is. Okay. She is around.
Good.
Which is like hilarious because her character, the one I based off her, is the one that gets abducted. Horseless. But yeah, so I wrote this book a really long time ago, and I actually wrote it very, very sporadically. So I wrote it in two chapters. So it's 2 points of view, 2 chapters, one from each point of view in the present, and then 2 chapters, one from each point of view in the past. So I have found going through it that I don't think it's working. So I'm going to do an adjust where I'm just going to do 2 points of view. One of them will be present and one of them will be past.
I was expecting that change.
Yeah. So, and then this helps too, because what I was doing was it opens with my character being abducted, and then you kind of get to see what happens to her while she's in.
Yeah.
And it just was taking away from the suspense, I think. Whereas it's like, if I just have my other character's point of view, then you don't know what's happened to this girl.
Right. Yes.
So that's one I'm working on
That's
and doing a big rewrite on. But that one's like, I've written the first draft, but now it's going through and changing everything.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on another book that is unfinished, but it is about a woman who is about to go to jail for life for 5 murders. And throughout the trial, she's not spoken, not shared anything about what happened or why she did it. And literally right before, like, as the jury is in discussion, she says, okay, I'm ready to tell my story, but I'm only going to tell it to one person. And it is the twin sister of my last victim.
Yes, I remember you telling me about this, and I got chills then, and I got chills now. Yep.
Thank you. So I am almost done that one in my first draft. I've written most of it. I have it all plotted out. I just have to sit down and write it. As you know, we're really good at doing that.
That's the fun bit.
But right now I am in the middle of edits on The Art of Murder. So I'm doing some changes to that because I had some police procedure changes that I needed to make. Thankfully, I have some really wonderful friends that are OPP officers and answered some really, really great questions for me. I'm very grateful for both of them. Acknowledgements galore.
Authenticity matters.
And especially just because it's like, it's funny. I talked to one of them and I asked him this question, and he's just like, oh yeah, but like, don't worry, everybody does it wrong. And I'm like, I know, but I don't want to do it wrong.
I don't want to be that person.
I'm like, I'd like you to open it and be like, yeah, this is mostly right.
Yes. I think that's what those that go the extra mile do.
Try. Right. And I mean, and you know what, if I didn't have them to answer my questions, I probably wouldn't worry about it as much. Right. But it's like, I have the source and they're both so willing to support that it's, I'm really grateful for that. That's
great. I love it. That's perfect. It's going to be such a big year for you.
Looking forward to it.
A big year. So we've got March 2020. March is 2025 is Twisted. April 2025 is Wicked.
Yeah.
And June 2025 is The Art of Murder.
Yes.
Wow.
I know.
So everybody should just, save themselves some angst and go to your online book retailer now and just pre-order all of them.
Yes. So The Art of Murder is not out yet for pre-order just because I'm still doing edits, but hopefully it will be out soon. I believe it will be in the next couple months for sure.
Oh, perfect. And the cover's beautiful. So
thank you.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be so good. So good. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is always lovely to chat with you. And
oh my gosh, so fun. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Oh, it was fantastic. So everybody go pre-order those books and we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Bye. Thank you. Bye.